Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be taking a look at President Sisi actually attending the celebration marking the Egyptian University's Excellence Day in Ismailia Governorate. We're going to be looking at the President's activities and focusing on the educational sector and merging it with the technological field and artificial intelligence as well. And joining us here tonight in the studio to shed more light on tonight's topic, we're joined by Dr. Nevine Makram Labib, the Director of the Social and Cultural Planning Center at the Institute of National Planning, Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Vice President of the Egyptian Society for Information Systems and Computer Technology. Dr. Labib, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for your kind invitation. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion with Dr. Labib, let's check out this report regarding President Sisi attending today the celebration marking the Egyptian University's Excellence Day, which he held as well with members of the Higher Council of Universities at the Suez Canal University and also honored distinguished students. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
President Fattah al-Sisi stressed on Tuesday that it was necessary to come up with scientific ideas to face challenges to the state. The President was speaking during a meeting with members of the Higher Council of Universities at the Suez Canal University as part of celebrations marking Egyptian University's Excellence Day. During the meeting, President Sisi discussed quality of education in higher education and scientific research. The head of state was briefed on the status of Egyptian universities with regards to international accreditation. During the meeting, Alexandria University had reviewed efforts to link scientific research with industry. For his part, the head of Cairo University also gave a briefing on efforts exerted to upgrade the position Egyptian University in international rating institutions. President Sisi was briefed by the head of Tanta University on efforts to encourage students' participation in Decent Life initiative. Addressing the attendees, President Sisi said, "It is important to announce the introduction of the new colleges, especially those with technological specialities of which the job market is in need." He said it is important to make sure that specialities at universities respond to the job market, especially digitalization, which he said is needed not only in Egypt but also worldwide. Speaking at a discussion session, he said citizens should be aware of the amount of expenditure in educational infrastructure. The President also attended a session dubbed The Story of a Nation with heads of university, students, unions, and a session of building the Egyptian character. During the discussions, the Sisi was briefed on progress of education system at state, civil, and foreign universities and efforts to develop technical and basic education in Egypt. He said 25 million students need the allocation of at least 1 trillion Egyptian pounds. President Sisi said the education culture in Egypt must be prepared to accept new development suggestions. He stressed that there was no time for 5-year plans to implement any projects related to educational development.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion with Dr. Labib right away. Doctor, now, first off, before we start delving into the statements made by the President and the way to develop the educational and scientific sector in general, let's shed some light on the President's keenness to attend such an event, the Egyptian University's Excellence Day, talking with heads of the different universities around Egypt and also honoring the distinguished students in Ismailia. How do you see the importance and the significance of the President actually attending such a ceremony?
Actually, it shows that our President values the education, and that's a very important point. because it is a first priority in Egypt nowadays. If you need to change or if you need to improve the performance of any project in Egypt or of the society in Egypt, then you need to tackle, first of all, the education, especially that we have youth. And we're very happy and pleased that we have a very high percentage of youth in Egypt. So by attending today, he's just showing how he perceives the education, the training as a first priority.
Well, the President also reiterated that obviously to develop such an integral sector, the educational sector, because everybody's been calling for the development of the educational sector along with the health sector, but he mentioned that the state faces many challenges and we need to find some sort of scientific ideas or scientific solutions to overcome these obstacles. So what could the scientific solutions and the scientific ideas be that would be able to overcome such challenges other than the usual financial sort of obstacles and the development of the skills of everyone involved within the sector? What kind of scientific solutions is he referring to?
Actually, we're facing many challenges nowadays, whether we're talking about climate change, whether we're talking about disasters, economic crisis, healthcare problems, and so on. And we're not talking only about Egypt, but these are challenges that are being faced worldwide. So as university professors, we should focus on educating our students so that they can come up with some graduation projects that tackle these problems and that provide kind of innovative solutions. And that's the main role or the main contribution of universities. We're not only talking about educating the learners and then, just transferring knowledge, but we're talking about making them use this knowledge and the skills and many things that they have learned in universities so that they can come up with innovative solutions. Especially that nowadays we're talking about startups, for example. So we're actually supporting the youth, we're supporting the university students, we're supporting the fresh graduates and the graduates to provide the society with new solutions in each and every domain.
Well, do these scientific solutions necessitate or require different mechanisms than the ones Egypt have been used to for decades?
Yes, definitely. We should make use more of IT and of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Especially that nowadays we're talking about the generative artificial intelligence. So we have new methods, we have new technologies, we have emerging technologies that we can make use of in order to provide new scientific, solutions.
Yes.
So making use of these technologies as tools, benefiting from these technologies, especially that the technologies have some pros and cons. So at least we should come up with some pros, with some advantages.
Yes. Well, we will definitely be talking more in detail about artificial intelligence and implementing it within the educational system. But one of the classic sort of obstacles is the financing of the development in general. The President said we have 25 million students and the country needs to allocate about 15 billion Egyptian pounds to really work on developing not just the educational infrastructure, but also taking really good care and qualifying those 25 million students. How would you read those numbers, the 25 million students, the 15 billion Egyptian pounds? How do you read these numbers?
Maybe some people perceive this budget as kind of a high budget, especially with the economic crisis. But I perceive it as a very important and efficient resource allocation. I mean, allocating this budget to education is the only way to make things better, the only way to improve, the only way to make Egypt better. So I perceive it as a very important point.
Yes. Well, with such a big, or such a number, the 15 billion pounds, how are we supposed to spend or finance the educational system? Is it within a certain time period? Because the President also said that we don't have time for 5-year plans. So the development needs to be with an immediate effect. So how can we come up with the £15 billion allocated for the educational system and really work on financing the educational system right away, no time for 5-year plans?
Okay. As you just said, that there is no time for the 5-year plan, especially again with the emerging technologies. So looking at the educational system in Egypt, maybe we should provide the system, first of all, with some facilities. Like, for example, having artificial intelligence labs. Maybe that's one of the points that we need to improve, because we have very smart students, and that's, very well known worldwide, especially that now with the outsourcing and with the remote work, we're seeing that many students and many fresh graduates are working in IT projects and in AI projects, as per the numbers in many studies. So we should provide them with some facilities. What we really need to work on is labs, having labs. Because for the software, we have many freeware, many software that is available free of charge, but we need the equipment. So if we work on providing these equipment and providing these facilities to universities, then we're making things easier for the students and for the researchers. And if we focus on research, then we'll definitely have solutions and better solutions for our current problems and current challenges. How we can come up with the budget is a very tough question to answer, but I think that maybe we should cooperate with the private sector. Especially that nowadays we're talking about private sectors, we're talking about NGOs, not only the governmental entities. So we should work hand in hand to provide these facilities and this budget to the educational sector.
Well, talking about having those sort of labs, really high-tech, advanced technological labs within the schools. Now, the President said that the country is planning on establishing 100 new schools all over the country that would include all these sort of technologies and these sort of labs and research and development offices and departments, which would cost £15 billion. Now, having those 100 schools all over the country, are they going to be distributed all over the country, or will there be more of a concentration within the biggest cities and establishing these schools? Do we need the assistance of other foreign sort of countries or countries known for their educational prowess internationally? Is our ICT sector here in Egypt, with the artificial intelligence sector here in Egypt, are they equipped and developed enough to have the expertise and the know-how to establish this sort of technological infrastructure within the schools?
Yes, definitely. But we need to apply the data analytics, because if you need to allocate these schools, then you need to have more data about the different governorates. What do they need? Speaking of the labor markets, so as to match the students and their needs and the graduates and the labor market. So we need to focus on having more data, what you call good data, and then doing our work as in data analytics, so as to have some prediction of what will be required in the coming 5 years, at least, and then to give some prescription or some guidelines to policymakers so that they know where and how to do the things. But we have the expertise. We only need to know how to make use of this expertise in order to be able to allocate the schools in the governorates that really need this.
Yes.
Not only to have all of the schools in Cairo, for example. And what about the type of education, the type of programs that they will be providing? That's another question. Not only the school, not only the building, but the programs you're offering.
Well, the President has been, he mentioned many times the importance of the transformation, the digital and digitization transformation process that the country is going through, especially with the Decent Life initiative. Now, to be able to have or collect the good data that you've mentioned, how far are we in the transformation or the transition, the digitalization and digitization process to have such good data?
Actually, we started with the digitization, which is having good data, but here we're talking about good digital data. So we already have the data, but we're working nowadays on the process. That's what you just mentioned, the digitalization, and maybe this needs some regulations. That's one of the challenges we're facing nowadays. How to have regulations, how to have laws that will help in the process of the re-engineering process. To have a look at the current processes, how we can simplify these processes. And by doing so, once we finalize this stage, then we'll be having the digital transformation as a project all over Egypt.
Dr. Labib, now you've mentioned about, I mean, you spoke about the importance of having the right qualified cadres that would be able to not only manage and educate the new artificial intelligence and technological sciences to the students, but I mean, we have an initiative to qualify teachers, to qualify the professors, to develop them, because the technological field, artificial intelligence, it's developing, it's being updated by the day, if not the hour. So how are we working to qualify teachers, professors and tutors within the technological and artificial intelligence sectors?
Actually, we have an initiative that started in 2021, I guess, and it's about TOT, training of the trainers. Because if you want to teach the students, then first of all, you need to teach the tutors. That's a very important point. And you need to change our mindset as professors in order to, you know, to be kind of working on the digital transformation field. Then we need, first of all, to be convinced, because sometimes you have some resistance from the professors or from the teachers themselves. We as humans, so it's not only the learner, but it's also the tutor or the professor. So this started 2 years ago, and it's focusing on kind of transferring some attitudes and some skills to the tutors. So it's already there, and that's a very important point, maybe more important than having labs or having equipment. The mindset.
Well, would it also be an idea to have the fresh graduates, I mean, even with limited working experience within the real world or life post-graduation, to actually convince some of the fresh graduates of a career to be professors and teachers and tutors within the technological field, artificial intelligence, trying to really convince them of having a career, of not just working within the sector and the development of it, but also just the real honor of actually teaching students within such a relatively fresh field here in Egypt.
Actually, we need to convince them, because most of them are more towards industry. Whenever we talk to students, it's different nowadays. They're thinking about the industry, the development, more than the teaching. Although they need to understand that if the students are not taught in a good manner, an efficient manner, then you will not have any developers. But maybe it's because even the learning process has changed. Nowadays we're talking about platforms. We're not talking about the usual or the traditional learning process. But maybe some platforms, maybe now we have robots as professors, so it's changing. It's not the only, I mean, way to just provide the traditional learning. But we need to focus on having more professors in this area.
In Egypt, Dr. Labib, we're used to students always, for decades, really flocking onto the schools of medicine, engineering, wanting to have careers in such prestigious specializations. How would you rate now the modern Egyptian students' interest within the technological specialities within the educational system?
Again, they have a different mindset. So, for example, this year they were asking a different question. What about work? What about the new job opportunities? How can we get a job once we graduate? So they started thinking in a different way. And that's why you have more students now in the artificial intelligence schools or artificial intelligence colleges. So it's different. It's not only the medicine, the engineering, with all due respect, of course, to all domains and to all fields. But now they're focusing more on the jobs. What about after graduation?
Yes.
And that's a very valid point, by the way. That's why we need to encourage more the interdisciplinary programs so that we can embed the artificial intelligence in all of the colleges. So, for example, you will have artificial intelligence in healthcare, in engineering, in tourism, and so on. Because maybe in 1 or 2 years, you will have all the jobs requiring these skills.
Yes.
So we need to be ready. We need to be proactive.
So the students' questions, what about the work opportunities after graduating? So how can we provide a certain, a clear path for graduates after finishing their studies within a career path, work opportunities within Egypt, instead of students dreaming or wanting to pursue a job outside of the country and really working on holding on to our great calibers of Egyptian students? How can they find a job? What are the work opportunities for them within the real world? I mean, if someone's graduating now or next year, instead of waiting for 2 or 3 years after artificial intelligence is being implemented within all industries of the Egyptian society, how can we guarantee work opportunities for students studying with technological specializations and artificial intelligence?
Again, by implementing artificial intelligence and data analytics, because you have many tools that are developed, and these tools give you an idea. For example, in 2 or 3 years, what about the new job vacancies?
Yes.
What about the new job opportunities? Because you have many, like for example, the prompt engineering jobs. These are new jobs, even for us in the field. So by having these indicators, again, you can be proactive and you can start to give some courses to these students while they're already in the universities, so that once they graduate, they're ready for the market. Another thing is that the new platforms, these new platforms help the fresh graduates writing their CVs and writing the cover letters and customizing the CV based on the job opportunity. That's a very tough job, by the way.
Yes.
Okay, it requires time and some effort and maybe some knowledge, so as to be able to customize your CV based on the job you're applying for. So having these platforms helping the graduates is a very good point. And then having these platforms, again, do some assessment. These assessments are for not only for the knowledge, but for the skills, attitudes, talents, so that they can recommend the more appropriate job, the more suitable job for each candidate. And they can also recommend the courses that he or she should take in order to be ready or to be more eligible for this job opportunity. So again, we can make use of artificial intelligence, not only by teaching these students or these graduates, but by providing them with a more suitable job.
Yes. Well, we've witnessed the inauguration of many technological universities around the country over the past few years. How would you rate the performance of these universities, especially that they are sort of the first of their kinds within the Egyptian educational system? How would you assess the performance of them so far, be it the students' interest, their admission into these universities, the professors teaching those students, the infrastructure of these students? How far are we within, how would you evaluate the performance of the technological universities around the country?
I guess it's getting much better, because when we started working on having artificial intelligence colleges, it was not easy for us because,
Yes.
again, that was kind of a paradigm shift. And maybe not all of us were ready for it because not all of the computer science professors are into AI, again.
Yes.
And that was, some of them were resistant. But nowadays, with the emerging technologies and with having the artificial intelligence in nearly all of the domains, even in Egypt, now they're very much interested, especially that it's kind of challenging for them.
Yes.
So whenever, for example, you're giving a lecture, then you have to get prepared, you have to get the latest news, because sometimes while you're teaching, while you're giving your lecture, then there is kind of a breakthrough
Yes.
in this domain. So I think that nowadays it's much better. It's not like when we started. Especially that we did some assessment, but again, we need to work more or to focus more on the infrastructure, on the facilities, on the labs. For the research, it's getting much better, especially now with the EKB, the Egyptian Knowledge Bank. Then we have all of the research papers. That was not the case when I was, for example, studying. It was very tough for us to get any research paper, and we should pay a lot, and we have to maybe wait for 2 to 3 weeks to have this research paper, which is very long time. But now everything is available, free, one click, as they say. And for the publishing, again, it's the same story. You can publish free of charge.
Yes.
With many international publishers. So regarding the research, things are getting much better. But again, I think we should focus on the facilities.
Well, talking about the implementation of artificial intelligence to have a clear sort of or a big pool of work opportunities and AI jobs being created for students and fresh graduates, we were talking about the transformation or the transition into the digitalization spectrum here in Egypt, and we're talking about developing education, and we're also talking about implementing AI within all domains within the Egyptian society. How far are we in implementing artificial intelligence in all sectors of societies, in all industries? What sectors are more resistant to the implementation of artificial intelligence? Which sectors are very much welcoming and almost 100% sort of absorbent to artificial intelligence?
I see the education, the agriculture, the healthcare definitely. Maybe the healthcare is making use of AI already in many projects, especially in the early detection of diseases, such as the early detection of breast cancer, for example. Agriculture is having many projects. But the thing is that we're facing some challenges. Again, the IT infrastructure, the mindset of the people, and the regulations.
Yes.
Again, we need to work more on having regulations, because in some of these sectors we have the facilities, but we don't have the regulations. Like, for example, in the healthcare, you have the telemedicine, but you need again to have more regulations.
Yes.
Or else you will not be able to use all of these facilities. And these are very important, because sometimes with telemedicine, you're providing healthcare services to many places that you cannot reach using the traditional ways. So I think we should tackle the challenges first, and then have kind of an action plan to implement it in all of the domains in Egypt.
Dr. Labib, I mean, you're involved not just within the technological and artificial intelligence field, but also the educational and human development side of it in general. Now, how would you rate the performance of the Egyptian universities internationally, and to what extent is it important for the Egyptian universities to have international accreditation?
It's very important. Because now we're not talking about the usual, again, the usual learning process or learning ecosystem. Like, for example, we can provide the same certificates for students that are out of Egypt. So if we're not accredited, then we will not be able to compete. And now we're not competing only in local market, but in international markets. So now, by having more cooperation with universities, high-ranked universities, and by having more opportunities related to research, we're doing a good job, a great job. If you compare the numbers between 2020 and 2022, for example, then you'll find more universities getting accredited, which is very important for us, like Cairo University, for example. So that's a good start for us.
Is it a difficult process to get the international accreditation for universities?
Kind of. It is difficult, but if you have the proper tools and if you know how to do it, because there is documentation, there is research, there are many criteria that you need to satisfy. So if you know how to do it, then we can definitely do it. And I guess we're on the right track, especially with the cooperation of the other universities. That's very important. We need more exposure. We need more knowledge transfer.
What about the Generation Z initiative? I mean, the President said that the Long Live Egypt Fund, the Tahya Master Fund, will be actually working on supporting the Generation Z initiative. Can you tell us more about the Generation Z initiative and how important will it be for such a fund to really back it up?
It's focusing on healthcare and education. And again, these are maybe the two top priorities in Egypt nowadays. Okay, so you need to work more on providing facilities, whether for education or for healthcare. Especially now we have many initiatives in the healthcare field. You have the universal insurance, the healthcare insurance, and that's a very important project in Egypt. We have the genome project. So we're actually focusing on many projects, and we're taking the lead in Africa. Now we're not only talking about Egypt, but we're talking about Egypt and Africa as well. So that's why this initiative focuses on these two pillars.
And talking about such an initiative, not just for Egypt, but also for Africa. Now, all of these developmental processes that we are talking about, be it in education, technology, and the emergence of both of them. Now, are we still maintaining the sustainability aspect of it, keeping it a sustainable sort of progress, sustainable development, sustainable upgrading, and keeping up with the international standards?
Yes. That's Egypt 2030, by the way. So we're focusing on providing sustainable health, for example. We're focusing on making use of all the tools in order to be able to sustain whether the development in different domains, whether we're talking healthcare, education, climate change, the environment. That's again a very important aspect. So we're definitely, whenever we're working on any plan, we're definitely having in mind the sustainable aspect.
Dr. Labib, there was a session that was held dubbed Building the Egyptian Character at the celebration, and it was held, such a session, such a theme has been held many times even before. What sort of angles or concepts that would be applicable to help build the Egyptian character, and how long would the building process be, or really molding and developing the Egyptian character as a whole?
I think it's a very long process, because here we're talking about many aspects, not only the development or the fields, but you're talking also about the values and the identity. So maybe that's a very long process, and we need to have the cooperation of many partners. So there are many stakeholders, especially in this point. I was reading about this point today. And we had a session today in the Institute, and we tackled this point. Again, we focused on the values, especially that in our center, we're talking about the values as a main issue, and we're talking about a research related to the Egyptian character and the values. So I see it as kind of a long process, since it involves many aspects.
And obviously, we are focusing on the higher educational sector in general, but also, such a development and such a building process should also start from not just primary school, but also kindergarten.
Yes, because as you know that it's very important to teach the students or the pupils at the age of 4. That's
Yes.
how we start. And that's, by the way, much more important than university students.
Definitely.
If you need to change, again, the mindset, then you should start very early. So you should be focusing not only on primary school, but on kindergarten, as you just said, by giving them a different learning process, by
Yes.
providing them with different values. Again, different mindsets.
And is primary school and nursery and kindergarten getting the same sort of attention that higher education is getting?
I think we're focusing more on higher education because sometimes we think that it's more important. But in my opinion, we should start, with the kindergarten. I do agree with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, definitely a great celebration and a great occasion today. President Sisi attending the Egyptian University's Excellence Day and meeting with the distinguished students and graduates and honoring them as well. And as Dr. Labib has mentioned, a lot is being done within the technological and educational field here in Egypt, and still a lot more needs to be done. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Nevine Makram Labib, the Director of the Social and Cultural Planning Center at the Institute of National Planning, a Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Vice President of the Egyptian Society for Information Systems and Computer Technology. Dr. Labib, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Night International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.